Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be ranking every operation in Rainbow Six Siege starting from Black Ice and ending on High Caliber. I'm not going to be ranking Demon Veil today because I'm going to be uploading a video on Monday talking about Demon Veil and giving my opinion on it, and I'm going to rank it on this tier list. So for now, we're just going to be doing up to High Caliber. I wanted to give myself a little more time to list Demon Veil, and also I wanted to do an entire video on it. So we're going to be saving Demon Veil for a future video. But I'm going to be doing everything up to High Caliber. Keep in mind that every season before Operation Health, I haven't actually played, so this is just going to, they're just going to be ranked based off of what I've read and seen on the seasons. But Operation Health past that, I have played every single season. And also, I didn't end up moving to PC until roughly Burnt Horizon, I want to say. So just keep in mind that any season from Operation Health to Burnt Horizon, I experienced on console. Okay, first up is Black Ice, which was the first operation to ever be released for Rainbow Six Siege. This operation came with Buck, Frost, and the release of the Yacht map. And it also came out with Spectator Cam, which is the ability to like spectate custom games pretty much, which allowed Pro League and things of that nature to exist. In my opinion, I think the strongest part of Black Ice is Buck, obviously. Also, during Black Ice is when the famous Black Ice skin released to the game, so we have to keep that in mind as well. Black Ice became a thing because of Operation Black Ice. And so, honestly, in my opinion, I think Black Ice is a pretty, like, mediocre season at best. Buck is kind of, in my opinion, the thing that's carrying this season a lot. And so, I think, honestly, I'm going to put Black Ice B. I may end up shifting it down later on in the tier list. But right now, I think Black Ice is a B, just because Buck was a huge addition to the game. And also, you know, the famous Black Ice skins came from this operation. Dustline is the second operation to be released for Rainbow Six Siege, and it brought the addition of Valkyrie, Blackbeard, and the map Border. On top of that, it implemented the ability for you to customize your loadouts between rounds, so change out like your sights and your weapon skins and things like that, which obviously was a huge addition, because if you couldn't do that now, today, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would be complaining about that. But I think Dustline is definitely a better season than Black Ice. The main issue with Dustline is that Blackbeard released absolutely broken, and to this day I still think Blackbeard is a terrible operator, and just for that, that's going to dock a lot of points from Dustline. Border was a way better map than Yacht, and also I would argue that Valkyrie is a way better operator than Buck. But the main downside of this season is that it implemented the completely broken operator that is Blackbeard. His face shield had a ridiculous amount of health at the start, and he could basically just face take headshots, which obviously is a broken mechanic in a game where one-shot headshots exist. So for that, I'm honestly probably going to put Dustline in C, just because I hate Blackbeard and I think he never should have been added to the game. If I was to rank it without Blackbeard even being in the question, I would probably honestly put it top of B, but I'm still gonna put it in C because Blackbeard is a terrible operator. Next up is Operation Skull Rain, which came with Capitao, Chimera, and the map Favilla. And with this operation, Battle Eye was also added into the game, along with Tactical Realism mode and the Surrender system. Now, honestly, in my opinion, I think Favilla at the time, because you have to keep in mind, this is not the Favilla rework that we have today. This is the original Favilla. The original Favilla was a absolutely terrible map, which, in my opinion, was one of the worst maps in the game at the time, and almost all the way up until today, until the Favilla rework. So, in my opinion, I think strictly because of the map, this operation gets hurt quite a lot. And then on top of that, Chimera is a pretty trash operator in ranked and is very rarely used. To be fair, in its defense, Chimera is a very fun operator in casual. And also, Capitao is a really cool addition, and I think he was a really good operator, and he kind of still is. He's, in my opinion, a pretty mediocre operator now that he doesn't have flashbangs, but still, Capitao is a pretty decent operator. Honestly, I'm probably going to put Skull Rain in the C tier just because of Favilla. I'll put it above Dustline because, like I said, Blackbeard is a terrible operator and should have never existed, but I digress. Next up is Operation Red Crow. This operation brought Habana, Echo, the map Skyscraper, and Elite sets into the game. Habana, in my opinion, is one of my favorite operators design-wise in this game. Also, I think her gadget brought a lot to the game because at the time there was only one Heart Breacher. And so in my opinion, I think Hibana completely changed the game when she came out. Also, you have to keep in mind that Echo would eventually become one of the strongest operators in the game. At the time, Echo wasn't that strong, but he was still a very unique operator. He was the first defender to have a drone as a gadget. And then also elite sets were added into the game, which is some of the best cosmetics to ever exist. Now, the one bad part about this operation, in my opinion, is the map Skyscraper. The Skyscraper, especially in its original state, was absolutely terrible. I still don't like Skyscraper's rework to this day, but even back then, I hated Skyscraper. Skyscraper was an absolutely terrible map to play in ranked, and I hated every second of it. And in my opinion, I think that is the lowest point of Red Crow, and that's what's holding it back from being an S tier operation. But in my opinion, I think Red Crow is a solid A. Next up is Operation Velvet Shell. Velvet Shell brought us Jackal, Mira, and the new map Coastline. In my opinion, this operation is extraordinarily strong. Jackal is a super fun operator to play in casual and is very competitive in ranked. Mira, still to this day, is one of the strongest operators in the game, and at the time was one of the strongest operators in the game. And Coastline, in my opinion, is a masterpiece of a map. It's been my favorite map ever since it came out. When I started playing in Operation Health, Coastline was by far my favorite map, and it's pretty much been that ever since. And so, in my opinion, I think Operation Velvet Shell is an S tier. I think Operation Velvet Shell brought a lot of good new content to the game, and I think it's the first operation to really become S tier. Next up is Operation Health. Obviously, Operation Health brought in no new content to the game. This is also the first operation that I actually played myself. Operation Health brought in alpha packs, tons of bug fixes, and the new matchmaking system, which made matchmaking a lot easier and queue times a lot shorter. So Operation Health, in my opinion, was kind of a needed operation. I think a lot of people give it too much crap because if Operation Health never existed, the game probably would have never made it to this point, because matchmaking back then, before Operation Health, was absolutely atrocious. While Operation Health did bring in more bugs, there was a lot of bugs that were fixed as well. So in my opinion, I think Operation Health is probably in the C tier, but I definitely don't think it's F. I think Operation Health was a needed operation, and honestly, in my opinion, I'll put it bottom C. Obviously, Operation Health is kind of an unfair comparison compared to these other operations because they actually brought content into the game. But in my opinion, I think Operation Health was a very needed season. And honestly, I would like to see an Operation Health 2.0. Even though Operation Health is so low on this tier list, I would still like to see another one today because I still think Siege probably could use another Operation Health. But I'm going to put it in bottom C just because, like I said, no new content. And it was very buggy when it was released. Next up is Operation Blood Orchid, which brought in the most content we had ever seen at the time. This operation brought in 3 new operators in the form of Ying, Legion, and Ella. Also, it introduced the new map Theme Park, which at the time I actually really enjoyed. I think the pre-rework Theme Park was actually pretty fun. I honestly liked pre-rework Theme Park more than the rework Theme Park. I know that's kind of a controversial take there, but I think the original Theme Park was more fun to me than the new Theme Park. Honestly, I think Operation Blood Orchid was a really good season just because of the fact that it brought 3 new operators in. Legion being super fun and would stay competitive for a very long time until he got nerfed. Then Ying being really, really strong when she first came out. Then she'd get nerfed and she'd be kind of an okay operator. And Ella being a completely busted operator. Ella is probably one of the worst parts of this season because when she first came out, she was played every single round, no matter what. She was basically the Jaeger of the time, and Jaeger was very strong back then too. But Blood Orchid brought in the Scorpion, which the Scorpion Evo was by far the strongest weapon in the game. It had an extraordinarily high fire rate, low recoil, and really, really good damage output. And so because of this, every single match you'd run into an Ella. Ella was played every single round without question, and it kind of plagued the game. That is the biggest problem with Blood Orchid, but the actual content was very, very good. In my opinion, I think Blood Orchid is a solid B, honestly above Black Ice. I honestly would have it in S if it wasn't for the fact that Ella released so broken. Next up is Operation White Noise, which is the last operation to release in year 2. This brought Dokkaebi, Vigil, and Zofia into the game, along with the map Tower. Dokkaebi and Vigil, in my opinion, were very, very good operators, and in my opinion, were really strong additions to the game. We had never seen anything like Dokkaebi before, ever. Vigil was one of the first operators to counter drones effectively, in my opinion, because at the time, Mute wasn't a very strong operator, and so Vigil brought a way for roamers to counter drones very effectively. Also, Zofia being added to the game added an alternative to Ashe, which in my opinion was a really cool concept, and I think Zofia was a very strong addition to the game. But we all know how bad Tower is. Tower honestly is worse than Favela. Tower is absolutely terrible. I think Tower should have never been added to the game. It is a terrible map. Even in casual, people will leave this map on a consistent basis. Tower, literally, as soon as people load into the match and see the words Tower on their screen, will either Alt F4 the game, or they'll either leave to the menu and just queue for another match. So just for the fact that Tower was so terrible, and in my opinion, was the worst addition to the game, it is going to have to be probably a C tier operation. Maybe B, maybe, but that's like pushing it. I honestly think that White Noise is probably slightly, I would say top of C, because the operators in this operation were very, very good, but the map is absolutely terrible and probably ruins the operation. Next up is Operation Chimera, which was the first operation in year 3. This brought us Lion, Finka. Chimera did not release with a map, but in replacement it brought us Outbreak, which is one of the strongest events we've ever gotten, and eventually would spin off into its own game. Now, the biggest problem with Operation Chimera is the operators were clearly designed for Outbreak and not for the base game. Lion completely broke the meta and made the game extraordinarily attacker-sided. If you picked Lion, you'd basically guarantee a win for your team. Lion is by far the most broken operator that has ever been added into Siege. And Finka at the time wasn't very strong. She's very, very strong now, but at the time, she wasn't very strong at all, actually. And in my opinion, Finka was actually a pretty cool addition. And the Outbreak game mode was really, really good. Outbreak is by far an S tier event. It's the best event to ever be added. But strictly because of how broken Lion left the game, I think Chimera needs to be put pretty low on this list. I think that honestly, it's probably worse than White Noise. Like I said, Chimera is a really good season, except for Lion, and Lion completely broke the game for me and basically almost made me quit, if I'm being honest. After Operation Health and White Noise, I was enjoying the game, and then when Chimera came out and Lion was released, it completely left the game broken for multiple seasons, and it was very, very hard to keep playing with Lion in the state that he was. Next up was Operation Parabellum, which brought us Maestro, Alibi, the map Villa, and the Clubhouse rework, along with the pick and ban system. And on top of this, it brought us the bulletproof camera. In my opinion, Operation Parabellum, without even thinking about it, is an S tier season. It brought us the Clubhouse rework, which was a well-needed rework. Clubhouse was really, really bad at the time, and in my opinion, the rework made it drastically better. Then Maestro was released, which in my opinion is a really, really good operator, very fun to play, and brought a lot to the table. Alibi is a really fun casual operator. She's probably the weakest point of the season because she is not very good at all, but in casual, she's a very, very fun operator to play. And also, Villa being one of the strongest maps in the game, in my opinion, one of the best maps to ever release into Rainbow Six Siege, Parabellum deserves its spot in S tier. Next up is Operation Grim Sky, which one of my close friends and fellow YouTuber, creator Tony, joined during. This operation brought us Maverick, Clash, Hereford Base, and a slight buff to the map Consulate. Grim Sky was annoying strictly because of the fact that Hereford Base was added into the game, and the Hereford Base rework, in my opinion, ruined the fun of Hereford Base. Hereford Base was a really fun casual map, and I think Operation Grim Sky removed it being a fun casual map, and then on top of that, made it a terrible competitive map. So Hereford Base was left in this spot that was like in limbo where it was not good in casual and not good in ranked, so no one really wanted to play it. It wasn't tower level bad, like people didn't leave every time tower showed up in the casual queue, but Hereford Base is up there as one of the worst maps in the game. In my opinion, it's probably the second worst map in the game right now. And Maverick was a really, really good operator. He had a huge effect on the meta. He was the third operator to be added to the game that had the ability to breach hard walls. And Clash is a shield operator, which people hate shield operators, and she's very, very annoying. And a lot of people actually dislike Clash very, very heavily. So, in my opinion, I think Grim Sky is a pretty meh season. I think there's parts of it that was really, really good, like the Consulate map buff and the introduction of Maverick, but then there's also parts that are really, really bad, like Clash and Hereford. So I'm honestly going to put it in the B tier at bottom B. I do think it's better than the White Noise and Chimera operations, and so because of that, I'm going to put it in the low B tier. Next up is Operation Wind Bastion. Wind Bastion brought two really, really strong operators into the game. Kaid changing the meta on defense entirely, and Nomad helping a ton to clear out roamers and to cover your flanks. So those two operators were a great addition to the game. However, Fortress was a very, very bad map and was honestly really just terrible in competitive. The entire map looked the same, and it was very hard to make callouts for the map. And also, the map's layout was kind of like a maze, and so Fortress wasn't very popular in competitive, but it is a pretty decent casual map in my opinion, and I don't think it's nearly as bad as something like Hereford Base or Tower. Now, strictly because of the two operators, I truly do believe that this map deserves the A tier spot. I understand that the map isn't great, but the two operators that were added into the game during this season were amazing, and I think were really, really fun. Next up is Operation Burnt Horizon. This operation brought us two new operators in the form of Mozzie and Gridlock, and gave us the new map, Outback, which Outback wasn't as bad as something like Fortress. It was actually a map that people could bear playing in ranked, but it was still a pretty bottom tier ranked map. And Mozzie was a really, really good addition, and I think Mozzie is one of the best operators that we've gotten in a really, really long time. But Gridlock was very, very mediocre at best, because she basically was just Nomad, but worse. In my opinion, she still is that, especially because of the fact that she's a 3 armor. 3 armors really suffer on attack, and I think Gridlock was a pretty terrible addition to the game, especially since the previous operation introduced Nomad. So in my opinion, I think Burnt Horizon is a solid B. I would honestly say top of B. Next up, Operation Phantom Sight, which brought us two new operators in the form of Nook and Warden, and gave us the Cafe Dostoevsky rework, which, in my opinion, I'm gonna be honest, Phantom Sight, operators-wise, is the weakest operation we've ever gotten. The two operators added to this season are incredibly mediocre at best, and they're really bad in competitive, and in my opinion, not that fun to play in casual. Nook is the strongest out of the two, and in my opinion is probably the most fun to play in casual, but Warden is just absolutely terrible and is literally the worst operator to ever be added into the game. And because of this, I'm going to be putting Phantom Sight in the F tier. The Cafe Dostoevsky rework was a pretty solid rework. This operation also marked the point where we stopped getting new maps and new guns, which, if I didn't mention, Warden and Nook both were released with recycled weapons, which hurt the operators even more and made my want to play them even lower. Phantom Sight has caused a very bad trend in Siege, and has basically, in my opinion, caused a lot of the problems with the current operations to exist. And because of this, I think Phantom Sight is F tier, by far my least favorite operation in the game. Next up is Ember Rise, which brought us two operators in the form of Mario Goya, brought us the new Canal rework, and a ton of new features and events, like Doctor's Curse was added into the game during Ember Rise, and the Money Heist event was added into the game during Ember Rise. On top of this, they experimented with the Battle Pass system and introduced the first Battle Pass into Rainbow Six Siege during the season. They introduced the new ranked champion, and they introduced the new unranked playlist. On top of this, they removed the white mask bombers from Terrorist Hunt to make Terrorist Hunt an easier mode to aim train in. And in my opinion, I think this operation's strongest points is in the events and the features. I actually think that those are the things that are the strongest about this map. I think the operators, especially at the time, because we're not taking into account the most recent rework to Goyo. This is pre-rework Goyo and Amaru. And Amaru is really fun and casual, and in my opinion is one of the best casual operators that they've ever added, next to Oryx. And in my opinion, Goyo at the time was very strong in pro play, but in the normal ranked setting was very rarely used, and same thing in casual. So I think Goyo was probably the weakest point of that season. But Doctor's Curse was one of the most popular events to ever be added into Rainbow Six Siege. Money Heist was a pretty mediocre event at best. And in my opinion, I think the Battle Pass system was actually a pretty good system, and I like the current Battle Pass system that we have. Ember Rise, in my opinion, is nowhere close to Phantom Sight. I think this was a great season to follow up Phantom Sight because it did a lot better than Phantom Sight, in my opinion. I think Ember Rise is a B tier. I think Ember Rise's features and events that they added into the game were really, really good. I just wish the operators were slightly better, and I wish that it brought, you know, a new map into the game. Next up is Operation Shifting Tides. This brought us 2 new operators in the form of Cali and Wamai, and introduced the theme park rework that we know today. They did some additional things, like they renamed Casual to Quick Match and reworked the limb penetration system, but it's not much to talk about, in my opinion. I don't think Shifting Tides... I don't think the reworks or the features that they added in Shifting Tides are really worth talking about. The main topics of discussion is the theme park rework and Cali and Wamai, which honestly, I think Cali and Wamai are the 2 best operators that were released in year 4. But I think theme park's rework was really, really bad. I really hate the theme park rework. It is one of the most defender-sided maps in the game, and its addition has been absolute hell in ranked. I hate playing this map in ranked. It's terrible. I wish it never existed, and I have a very strong opinion on theme park. But Cali and Wamai were very, very good additions. Wamai being a alternative to Jaeger, which honestly had a really interesting back and forth because technically Wamai's gun was stronger, but his gadget was slightly worse. So it added this interesting back and forth between whether you wanted to pick the operator with a better gun or you wanted to pick the operator with a better gadget. And Cali brought in a new way to counter Bandit and Kaid and Mute with the form of her primary ability. She was also the first DLC operator to have a sniper rifle. The main problem with Cali is the fact that her sniper rifle is very inconsistent and she doesn't have an alternative primary weapon. But I think overall, Shifting Tides was a very, very solid season. I would probably put it bottom B. I think the main thing holding this season back was the theme park rework. Everything else in this season was really, really good though. Next up is Operation Void Edge, which brought us 2 new operators in the form of Ayana and Oryx, and brought us the map rework Oregon. On top of this, they added a ton of new things into the game, like the new arcade playlist Golden Gun, and they added the new in-game event Grand Larceny. This is also the operation that introduced the recruit loadout rework, the shrapnel change, and it introduced a ton of operator tweaks and loadout changes. And on top of that, it introduced the Around the World Battle Pass, which was Ubisoft's first big attempt at introducing a Battle Pass into Rainbow Six Siege. Honestly, in my opinion, I think Void Edge is a very strong operation. Oregon is one of the best reworks that they've done in history. Iana is a very, very fun operator on attack, and she's very strong. Oryx is one of the best casual operators to be added to the game. The events that they added in this operation were very fun and were pretty solid. And on top of that, the reworks that they made and the changes that they made during the season were very good, with the exception of the shrapnel change, which in my opinion needed a lot of tuning when it first came out because it was allowing people to die to shrapnel through walls very easily and through floors. So there was a little bit of issues with that. But I think overall, Void Edge is a solid A-tier map. I think it's slightly better than Bastion. But overall, I think that Void Edge was a very, very good season. Next up is Operation Steel Wave, which was a very controversial season. It introduced the new attacker, Ace, and the new defender, Malusi, which Malusi, when she first came out, was way overtuned and was honestly borderline overpowered. She wasn't nearly as bad as someone like Ella or Lion, but she was still up there as a very annoying operator to deal with on attack, and she was picked pretty much every round. Ace also came out a little bit overtuned as well. His hard breach gadget basically left Thermite completely useless, and he had the AK-12, which is still one of the strongest ARs in the game, with an angled grip and an ACOG. And on top of the 2 new operators, it brought in the house rework, which the house rework is terrible. I think it ruined the fun of the original house. The original house was a very fun casual map, and I think the rework of it actually ruined it. I think it's similar to the Hereford base rework in the sense that I think it was a good map in casual, and I don't think it should ever have been reworked. They tried to turn one of the most fun casual maps as something that was slightly more competitive, which I think ruined the fun of the map. A lot of people enjoyed the map before the rework, and after the rework, it completely ruined the map for them. Also introduced in this operation was the addition of the new secondary gadget proximity alarms, and they also introduced the first battle pass, like full-on battle pass. They introduced a new arcade mode in the form of attrition, and they introduced a new event called Mute Protocol. Also in this operation, a ton of operator tweaks were introduced, which were very, very solid in my opinion. Like, for example, the ability to match cancel and ranked was a very good change. They also increased the clearance level that is needed to play ranked to the level 50 to make it harder for cheaters to get new accounts. And in my opinion, the battle pass that was added in this operation was pretty decent. And overall, I think Steel Wave was a solid season. I think the main problems with it is the fact that the operators released a little too overtuned, and also the fact that the house rework was so terrible. But still, I honestly think it's probably a solid B tier operation. I'd probably put it above Black Ice, and I think I'm going to leave it there. Next up is Operation Shadow Legacy, which I'm not even going to talk about. I'm just going to go ahead and put it in S. Because I think Shadow Legacy was my favorite operation by far to ever be released in the game. This operation was extraordinarily fun and added a ton to the game. Shadow Legacy was the first operation to not release 2 operators, but it released 1 new operator in the form of Zero, and the rework to Tachanka that completely changed his gadget and gave him a brand new gadget. On top of this, they added the new secondary gadget, the Hard Breach Charge, and they added the new map rework, Chalet, which in my opinion, Chalet is one of the most fun maps to play in ranked right now, and is one of the strongest maps in the game. That rework was probably the best rework they've ever released, right next to Oregon. Also, a ton of new systems were added into the game, like Ping 2.0. They added match replay, they added the map ban system. They implemented a new battle pass, which pretty much was an every season addition at this point. They also added 2 new modes in the form of Super Fright, which was an event, and Golden Gun 2.0, which was an arcade mode. Also, this operation brought the reinforcement pool change, which gave every operator access to the entire team's reinforcement pool. So now every operator could reinforce 10 walls if they wanted to. Before this operation, everyone had to reinforce 2 walls because everyone carried 2 reinforcements. And if someone didn't have the time to reinforce 2 walls, then you just lose those reinforcements for the round. But now they added the addition of the reinforcement pool, which means everyone had access to the 10 reinforcements. Also, they reworked Thatcher in this operation. So overall, this operation was just absolutely insane. The battle pass was top tier. The changes they made were top tier. The only bad part about this operation, in my opinion, was Zero himself. I think Zero was a very weak operator, and I think he still is a very weak operator. But other than that, I think Shadow Legacy was amazing. Next up is Operation Neon Dawn. Operation Neon Dawn brought us the operator Aruni and the map rework Skyscraper. On top of this, it introduced another battle pass as usual, and added the Road to SI 2021 event and the Legacy Arcade playlist. Now, in my opinion, I think Aruni was a very fun operator, and in my opinion, I think she still is a very fun operator, but the Skyscraper rework was terrible. I think Skyscraper is still one of my least favorite maps in the game to play in ranked, and I legitimately just can't bear to play this map. But the operator itself was a very nice change, and I think the battle pass for this operation was actually pretty good. And the Road to SI event was very fun as usual. Pretty much every SI event is very, very good and fun to play. and the Legacy Arcade playlist was a very cool event as well. Overall, I'd probably say Neon Dawn is a pretty B-tier operation, and I don't really have much else to say about it. Next up is Operation Crimson Heist, which brought us the new operator Flores, brought us the map rework Border, gave us the new secondary weapon in the form of the Gone 6, and introduced a new battle pass, as always, and 2 new events in the form of Rainbow is Magic, the Apocalypse event, and it also brought us the newcomer playlist. It also introduced the match replay beta into the game, and implemented the reputation system tracking. Now, for Crimson Heist, I think Flores was a very, very strong operator. I think he's very fun, and I think he's a pretty middle-of-the-road operator, which I like for a new operation. I don't like operators to be super overpowered or super underpowered when they come out, and I think Flores was right there in the middle. And Border was a map that was really in need of a rework. However, I think this rework didn't really help the problems with the map. In my opinion, this rework is a very minimal rework and still kind of feels the same as the old Border. I think a lot of the problems that were needed to be fixed with the Border rework actually just stayed in with the new rework. The new rework barely changes any of the major issues with the map, and for that reason, I think the Border rework is actually a pretty bad rework. The addition of the Gone 6 was a very nice change as well. The Gone 6 has helped a lot of operators like Ayana to become very, very strong and some of the best operators in the game. The Gone 6 has helped a lot of operators become very, very strong like Iana and Finka, and it has helped make a lot of operators more viable. And the addition of the match replay system was a very nice change, and the reputation system tracking was nice, but it doesn't really affect us as players. It's only going to really affect us once the reputation system rolls out. And the 2 events that were added into this operation were pretty decent. Overall, I'd probably put Crimson Heist in a B tier. I would put it somewhere in B. Honestly, I think Crimson Heist is slightly better than Steel Wave. I would honestly put it here. Next up is Operation Northstar, which brought us the new operator in the form of Thunderbird and the Favela rework. And it also introduced a new battle pass as always, and introduced the containment event and the headshot arcade game mode. In my opinion, Northstar was when this game really started falling off for me. Towards the end of Northstar, I was starting to get very bored of the game, and I was really contemplating quitting the game permanently at the end of Northstar. Northstar was very, very mediocre at best. The operator that they added, in my opinion, was the only part of this season that I actually liked. I've started to grow to enjoy the Favela rework. I actually think Favela is a pretty good map, but at the time I wasn't enjoying it. And Thunderbird was pretty fun, but the battle pass absolutely sucked for this season. I think the Northstar battle pass was very, very bad. It kind of just killed any drive for me to play the game. Because of this, I'm going to have to put it in C. It's going to be one of the first operations I put in C in a while. Honestly, I'm going to put it below... I'm going to put it above Dust Line, but below Skull Rain, and I think that's where I'm going to put it. I know that's going to be a controversial take, but Northstar just killed all the drive for me to play, and, you know, to be honest, this tier list is my opinion, so I'm just going to put it in middle of C. Now we're starting to get to operations that aren't that far in the past. Next up is Crystal Guard, which brought us the new operator Osa, and 3 small map reworks in the form of the Clubhouse rework, the Coastline rework, and the Bank rework. On top of this, the Doctor's Curse event made a return, and the Golden Gun arcade event made a return. And then this operation, they also replaced armor with health. So now if you picked up Rook armor, now it would become health instead of armor. And they also reworked the armor system as well. So if you were a 3 armor, your armor would get replaced with health, and it was no longer just a hidden mechanic. It's now perfectly visible. Also in this operation, they added rim lighting to your opponents. And obviously they implemented another battle pass. Crystal Guard was the season that made me quit Rainbow Six. I stopped playing this game for a pretty long period during Crystal Guard, and Crystal Guard was by far my least favorite season that I've ever played in. I know I said Phantom Sight was that, but Crystal Guard is definitely a lot worse than that in my opinion. Osa is a very terrible operator. She's probably one of the worst operators we've ever got, and I honestly would argue that she's worse than Warden and Nook. But I know a lot of people may disagree with me on that. I think she's very boring. Her guns weren't that interesting because they were, you know, recycled guns as always. And her gadget was very, very boring and very easily countered with one single impact. Also, most of the changes in this operation weren't great, and the events were recycled. So pretty much this entire operation was incredibly boring for me and drove me to quit the game. And so Crystal Guard is an F tier season for me by far. Terrible, terrible season. Absolutely trash. Next up is High Calibre, which brought us Thorn, the Outback rework. It brought us a new battle pass as always, the SI 2022 event, and it implemented a bulletproof camera rework, some reworks to Finca, and some additional gameplay changes, and the HUD rework. Overall, I think High Calibre is a pretty bad season as well. I think it's almost on par with Crystal Guard. Thorn, absolutely terrible operator. I think she's trash. The only reason why I think people like her is because she has a new gun, and I don't even think the new gun is that cool or interesting because it's basically just the spear but worse. Also, this operation basically submitted the reason why I quit the game. I came back after Crystal Guard. I came back, played High Calibre at the start of the season, and was extremely bored. And I don't even think I completed the battle pass for this operation, if I'm being honest. This operation was terrible. I honestly think that if it wasn't for Demon Veil, I probably wouldn't be playing this game anymore because of this operation in particular and Crystal Guard. These two operations were terrible, and I think they are a perfect example as to why operations nowadays are so incredibly bad. This operation only brought us one operator and one rework, and that was pretty much it. And because of this, I think this operation is a F tier operation. I think it's slightly better than Crystal Guard, but not by much. I think both these operations are absolutely terrible. Okay, well, if you guys enjoyed this video and you'd like to do one of these yourself, you can go down below in the description. I'll have a link to the tier list maker that I made myself. Also, you can go follow me on Twitter and send me your guys' tier list if you guys want. I'll have the link to my Twitter down below as well. But yeah, just keep in mind, this is strictly my opinion. And also, if you guys want to see my opinions on Demon Veil, I'm going to be doing a video on Monday talking strictly about Demon Veil. And at the end of the video, I will be putting it on the tier list that I have here. If you guys enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy this one that's popping up on your screen right now, where I ranked every operator in Rainbow Six Siege as well. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.